Hello and welcome back to Alpha DevCon. And we've come to the part of the DevCon that a lot of people look forward to, and that, of course, is the Alpha Anywhere roadmap. I'm joined here with Selwyn Ravens, our co-founder and president of Alpha Software and technological lead here. And he's going to take you on a tour of the features that will be upcoming in our in future versions of Alpha Anywhere. Hi, Selwyn. Welcome.
Hi, Dave. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be back and glad to be talking to you.
I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter so that we can see your screen.
Okay.
And I'm looking at a GitHub screen at the moment. And I'm looking at a...
So what you should be seeing right now is the roadmap PowerPoint. Is that correct? Are you seeing that?
Yep, it's coming through.
Okay,
We're
great.
ready to go.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the Alpha Anywhere roadmap, and I'm not going to say anything about the Transform roadmap because Dan has already gone through the Transform roadmap in some detail. So let's start over here. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about is this year we're going to be introducing a new release strategy. So currently with Alpha, we release a nightly build, and we release the nightly build almost every day, which is why, of course, it's called the nightly build. And we're going to continue to release nightly builds, but we're also going to start releasing something called a preview build. And a preview build is going to be the same thing as the stable build. So the stable build is the last official release that we did. But the preview build is the stable build, but with no new features, just with critical bug fixes. So the idea is that currently, if there's a bug in the stable build, we generally fix it really quickly, but it's available in the nightly build. But obviously, people are reluctant to run production websites using the nightly build. And in fact, we even discourage that. And so the idea behind the preview build is that you can get a stable build, but just with critical bug fixes. So that's going to be coming out. We're going to start implementing this at some point during this year. The universal installer, you'll notice, already has support for preview builds in it, but we're not releasing any preview builds yet. So the ability to update the stable builds with just critical bug fixes is something that we've heard a lot of developers asking us for, and we hope that this goes a long way to making it easier to keep your Alpha Anywhere applications up and running. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about NoSQL. We've done a lot of work on support for NoSQL databases. In particular, we've done a lot of work for both Mongo and Google Firestore, and we're going to be demoing that. We've built direct support into the list control for Mongo and Firestore as first-class data sources, and we'll be demoing that as well. We'll be demoing how you can connect Alpha lists to Mongo, and both to Mongo running on-prem, so your own Mongo database server, but also Mongo Atlas, which is the hosted Mongo service that Mongo provides. Then we're going to talk about Google Firestore. So this is Google's NoSQL database, and we're going to be demoing how you can connect list controls to Firestore. And we're going to be showing how you can do that both server side. So what we mean by server side is that the data is retrieved by the Alpha server, and then the data is sent from the Alpha server to the client, to the list. But we can also show how you can do that client side, which means that the client, the browser, talks directly to Firestore and gets the data, bypassing the Alpha server completely. So that's what could be called a serverless application. It's not really serverless because, of course, the Google Firestore server is sending the data, but they're not your servers. And then we're going to be demonstrating how when you build a client-side Firestore application, you've got real-time data access. So what we'll be showing is an app running against Firestore, and then I'm going to ask Dave or Dan to make an edit on their side, and you'll see it appearing in real time on my screen. So we're going to talk about security. So we're working on single sign-on, and then we're also working on authentication using services like Auth0 and Okta. We're putting a big effort into framework applications. So what we already showed in the presentation on what's new in Alpha Anywhere, we showed how when you create a new project in Alpha, you can specify that this project should use the security framework. And that security framework application has a login dialog that takes you to the Tab UI component, and then the Tab UI component allows users to manage their account settings and turn on or turn off two-factor authentication, etc. But there's a lot more that the admin of the application might want to do. For example, the admin of the application might want to create new user accounts, disable users, change the groups that those users belong to, etc. So the framework application allows you to automatically create applications that have all of the necessary scaffolding to do security management. So the whole idea behind framework applications is that every application that you build probably has many of the same features or requirements in it. And by starting with a framework that implements many of those features, you can get a real quick start on building a new application. So one of the key things that we're going to be adding to the framework application is the ability for you as to build into your applications facilities for the admin to manage users. On the IDE, we're improving our Git integration. So currently you can already take a web project and make it into a Git repo. But what we're going to be adding is the ability to do branching, to create branches, and we'll be demoing that. And then we're going to be in the IDE, we're going to be switching over to using Visual Studio Code for all of the code editors. So there are a lot of code editors in our IDE for editing both XBasic code and also JavaScript code. And we'd like to switch over to a version of Visual Studio Code, which will be completely integrated into the Alpha IDE for doing all of your code editing. The UX component, there's a lot going on in the UX component. We've got SVG charts. So we already have SVG charts through a third-party library called, I think it's rgraph or rchart, but we've got our own SVG charts that are built into the UX component. And Dan already showed how we're using those in the Transform dashboard. So, so we're going to be demoing a little bit about SVG charting. Then one of the biggest new things coming is JSON forms, and we're going to be demoing that. So JSON forms are really inspired by Transform, because a Transform form really is described and defined using JSON. So JSON forms are very much are very similar to Transform forms. They are defined in JSON, and they let you edit and create JSON objects. So we'll be discussing more about what JSON forms are. And then I'm going to talk about why are we doing JSON forms. So one of the nice things about JSON forms is that there's a designer in the IDE for designing JSON forms, and it's a real-time designer. So as you make edits to the form, you get to preview the form in real time. We're going to be doing a drag and drop designer for JSON forms. The motivation for JSON forms is that they're extremely lightweight, so you can create JSON forms that have literally hundreds of controls, and your UX components is small and remains very performant. JSON forms can also be created programmatically, and JSON forms and transform forms will be interoperable. You should be able to take a transform form and import it into a JSON form, or take a JSON form and make it into a transform form. We're going to continue working on the calendar control. The calendar control is currently in beta, so people who want to get their hands on it are able to send Alpha a request to get a feature key that turns on the calendar control. But what we're going to be doing with the calendar control also is replacing Web to Cal. So many of you have used Web to Cal, which is the calendar component that Alpha has shipped with for quite some time now. But Web to Cal is based on a third-party library that needs to be purchased independently from Alpha, from the company that makes Web to Cal. So the new calendar control in Alpha will be written in such a way that it completely replaces the need for Web to Cal, and hopefully provides more functionality than Web to Cal provided. And on the server side, we're implementing debugging XBasic code under IIS. So one of the things that's nice about the classic server is the ease with which you can debug XBasic code. But when you switch to IIS, there's no debugging for XBasic code. So we're going to be releasing the ability to debug XBasic code running under IIS. And we're also going to be releasing the ability to debug Python code. So what we showed in the What's New presentation on Tuesday was how you can use Python to write server-side code in Alpha. But what we're going to also be doing is allowing you to debug into your Python code using standard debugging tools that are built into Visual Studio Code. We're working on new ways of doing reporting. So currently in Alpha, reporting is done by opening up either the freeform report editor or the layout table report editor. So we're going to be introducing the concept of Microsoft Word and HTML templates for report definition. So that's going to be a new and different way of creating reports, and hopefully this will allow for faster report generation. Dan spent quite a bit of time talking about workflow. So we're putting a big effort into workflow, and it's being driven largely by the needs for transform, but our goal is that all the work that we do on workflow should be available to Alpha Anywhere developers as well. So the idea would be that you can define workflows in the Alpha Web Control Panel, and then as users are interacting with grids and lists and Vuex components, they can perform certain actions that trigger workflows. So workflows are going to be a big part of what we are working on this coming year. On the server side, we have we've started a big effort on reducing the memory footprint of the server, and also working on free threading. Now, what that means is that currently XBasic is not free threaded, which means that when you run the Alpha server, the classic server, or even the IIS server, the parts of the server that execute XBasic code execute the code on a single core on the machine. With free threading, we're going to get better machine utilization, better throughput on machines that have multiple cores. So, and that will also result in a lower memory footprint for the server, which should result in overall better performance. We're continuing to do work on containers and Kubernetes. We're continuing to do work on supporting long-running server tasks that can be done in the background. One of the new things that we're going to start working on is scheduled events. So a requirement that we've heard from lots of customers is a requirement to automatically do certain things on the server at certain points in time. So for example, you might want to automatically print out reports and then distribute them to members of your team at a certain time every week. And so that would be an example of a scheduled event. We're also continuing to work on performance, and that would be the Alpha Cloud dialogue. So Alpha Cloud is becoming increasingly important to Alpha. We think of Alpha Cloud as the preferred deployment option for Alpha Anywhere applications. And so we're making as much effort as we can to improve the user experience when publishing to Alpha Cloud. And that means improving the performance of the Alpha Cloud dialogues. And that also means improving the performance of publishing an application to Alpha Cloud. So we're going to be working on that. And now what I'd like to do is switch over to demo. So I'm going to turn off my webcam now, and then go over to the Alpha Anywhere IDE. And Dave, can you see the can you see my screen right now?
I can. I'm looking at the Alpha Anywhere IDE right now.
Okay, and so what I'm going to do is start out, and let's just see. And I'm going to start out talking about Mongo and Firestore. So I'm going to go into the Alpha IDE right now, and I'm going to go now to something here called the MongoDB Explorer. So on Tuesday, when we spoke about what's new in Alpha, we showed off the SQL data editor, which is sort of a generic way of being able to edit any data in a SQL database. And the MongoDB Explorer can be thought of in a similar way. It's a generic way of editing data in any Mongo database. So when you're using Mongo, you have the ability of, you have the option of using Mongo's, a tool in Mongo called Mongo Compass, which lets you work with your Mongo databases, either your local Mongo databases. You can see if I go here, I've got Mongo databases both running locally over here on localhost, but I also have some Mongo databases running on Mongo Atlas, which is the hosted version of Mongo. So if I go there and say connect, I'm now connected to Mongo Atlas, and you can see here are the sample databases in my Mongo Atlas cloud account. And now if I go over to Alpha and I go to say get databases, I can see now that that's Mongo local. Let me switch over to Mongo Atlas over there and then say get. So these are all the same databases that I saw in Mongo Atlas. So now I'm looking at data that is coming from Mongo Atlas. So these are cloud Mongo instances. So I'm going to go there and choose that database. And then inside that database, we can choose collections. So I'll go there and choose that collection. And so now I'm looking at the data coming. So these are the Mongo database collections. So just for clarity, in a NoSQL database, what they call a collection is what SQL people call a table. So we're looking at a database called Sample Airbnb, and we're looking at a collection or a table called Listing Reviews. And we're looking right now, there are currently 556 documents or inside a collection. So a document is the equivalent of a row in a table. So if we click on different rows here, we're looking at the data. And if we go and we make an edit over there and then hit the save button, then we've just pushed that edit. We've just made an edit all the way back on the cloud version of the Mongo database. So with Mongo, we can basically we can connect to either this is the cloud, this is Mongo Atlas connection string here, which is the cloud version of Mongo, or we can go to local, which is a local version of MongoDB running on my own physical machine over here. So we can go there and choose, say, Northwinds, and then go there and get a connection, a collection. And so there's the region collection. Or we can go here, for example, and make a brand new collection. So we'll go there and say a new collection, and I'll call this, say, DevCon demo. And then I can go now into this collection and import data from a SQL database. So I'll go here and I'll say import a simple JSON document from, and we'll go here and we'll choose a SQL database. Then I'll go there and choose, say, the customers table. And I'll go there and choose all fields. And then click OK. So we've now just imported 91 records from a local SQL database into my Mongo database. And there's the data over there. And now we're going to show how you can now build a list control directly against this Mongo database. So the same thing is true of Firestore. So I'm going to go now to, I'm going to close the Mongo Explorer down, and I'm going to go over to, let's see where this is, to Firestore. So now I'm connected right now to Google's Firestore console over here. And you can see that we have a bunch of different collections over here. And just like Mongo, this is a NoSQL database. So you can see here's the data. So we're looking at a database called Northwind Customers 4, and we're looking at a collection right here called NW Customers 4. So if we go back to Alpha right now, and then we go now to the tools, and this time not to the Mongo Explorer, but to the Firestore Explorer, we can connect. And here you can see if we just switch to a different connection string. So let's go to Firestore 2 and then go and get, I think I'll just go to that one. And so you can see here we have the data. We're looking at data directly on Firestore right now. So we're going to show how you can now also build list controls that go directly against your Firestore databases. So let's switch now to the list control. We'll go here and we'll build a new UX component. And we'll go here to the list. And if we open up the list, we'll see that the list has these additional options here for connecting. So obviously, SQL is the one that most people use most of the time, but now you can go to, say, MongoDB or Firestore. Let's start out with MongoDB, and then we'll specify our connection string. So I'll choose a local database. I'll choose the Northwinds database name. Then I'll choose in this collection, I'll choose the, let's go here and choose, say, customers. Then I'll specify what fields. So you can see that it's pretty much identical to the process that you go through when you're connecting to a SQL database. And then I'll go to my layout over there. And then go ahead now. And I'll go ahead and I'll save this now as Mongo DevCon. So now here I am going directly against a Mongo database using drivers that talk directly to Mongo that Alpha supports, and I can do anything that I can do with the list. I can do when connected to Mongo. So I can turn pagination on. I can turn on a detail view to make this editable. So let's go back to this list and then go down to paginate. And we'll say that our pagination method is let's go there and specify, our pagination method is navigation buttons. We'll turn on a navigation bar. We'll put the navigation bar in the list footer over there. And then let's go and also turn on a detail view, and we'll use the Genie to build the detail view for us automatically. So I'll go ahead and done that now, and let's go ahead now and then save this and then go and run this. So here's my paginated view. So let's go to the next page. Then let's go to that record, and in the detail view, change it from 92 to 94, hit the save button, and then hit the synchronize button. And now we've basically gone ahead and made an update against our local MongoDB, but I could just as easily have been making my updates against the remote cloud version of Mongo that we're supporting, that is running in Mongo Atlas. So that's basically how you can build a list directly against a MongoDB database. Let's go now and do the same thing against a Google Firestore database. At this time, we're going to choose the option. We're going to show both server-side and also client-side. So I'm going to go now and create, again, another new list. So I'll go here to list controls again. And this time I'm going to choose Firestore. And I'll say that I'd like to use server side. So that means that the Alpha server has to be running, because the data will be retrieved from Firestore by the Alpha server and then will be sent from the Alpha server to the list control. But I also have the option, as we discussed earlier, of doing client side. So I'm going to show both. So we'll start up by doing server side. So we'll go here to Firestore 2. We'll choose our collection. I'll choose Northwinds, and I don't want to do that. I want to go to, let's just go here to fields and then go to the layout and choose, say, customer ID. And then I'll go here and I'll say contact name. And I'll go there and say address, city, and country. Go ahead and then go now and save this. I'll call this again, so Firestore. So there we go. We're talking now directly to Firestore from the server, and we're showing it in the list. So now let's go and change this from being server side to being client side. So I'm going to go there, choose client side, specify my client side connection string over there, and then I'm going to click this checkbox here that says track changes. So what that's going to do is that's going to mean that as soon as anybody makes a change to this Firestore database, I'm going to see it in my list control. So I'll go ahead there and save this. So I don't think did I select the columns? Yeah, I did. Okay, so I'm going to go save this here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually publish this to an S3 bucket. So I'm going to go now to go here and say create static HTML and actually publish this to an S3 bucket over there. So that's going to basically create an HTML page that has a list control in it that, but I haven't yet turned on the detail view. So this is not yet an editable list. And what we're going to show is how, if I make an edit over here, the edit will be seen by other people immediately, and also vice versa. So we're looking at this data right now, and let me just see if I go here. So here's another version of this this app. And Dave, are you still connected to to this page?
I am.
So would you mind on your side making an edit to any one of these rows?
All right, so I'm going to choose Thomas Hardy's row, and
Okay.
I'm going to make it Thomas Hardley the third. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save and synchronize.
Okay, so what you see there is an example of a list control in Alpha that is using Google Firestore as the backend database, and where we turned on the ability over here to do track changes. So that means that we're getting real-time updates uh, on the list control. So as I change the data in the list, other people will see my changes in real time, and vice versa. So this is similar to the work that we did last year on integrating Pusher, excepting that now the data is being displayed in a list control, and you don't have to go and to all of the trouble of trying to set up WebSockets, etc. You can just get the ability of that Google Firestore offers of doing real-time database, and the list control gives you the ability to automatically and really easily build controls or build lists that are connected directly to your Firestore database that track data changes in real time. We also have an ability in the, if you're connected to a Firestore data source, of doing enable persistence. And what that means is that if you're offline and you make edits to your Firestore data in the list using a list with a detail view, then the minute that you get your connection back, the data will all synchronize, and all the edits that you made on your side will be pushed back to the Firestore database, and any edits that anybody else made will be pushed to your version of the list.
Can I
So,
interrupt you with a question?
yeah, sure.
Cool. So this Firebase integration in the list is amazing. Are we thinking about also doing that for just the regular UX or the view box? Maybe for viewing, of course, the view box.
So we haven't thought about that. Basically, obviously, you can put Firestore into a list, and then you can use the list as the data source for the view box. Although once you've
Oh,
got
right.
data in a list, there's nothing that the view box offers that you can't also do in the list. So everything that a view box is really a superset. I mean, a list, sorry, is a superset of a view box control.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay. So, just to sort of recap what we've shown here, we've shown how we can use the Mongo Explorer to look at the data in a Mongo database, and that can either be a local Mongo database or a cloud Mongo database hosted on Mongo Atlas. We've shown how you can use the Firestore Explorer to look at Firestore databases that Google is hosting. We've shown how basically you can build list controls that use both Mongo and Firestore as their native data source. When you build a list that goes against Firestore, you can either go server side or client side. If you go client side, in effect, what you've built is a serverless application, because there's no alpha server behind that. You're talking directly from the browser directly to the Firestore server that Google is hosting. So that's why we call that a serverless application. And you can track changes. So that means that the minute that you make a change on your side, everybody else who's connected to that same database will see those changes. So next, what I'd like to talk about is SVG charting, and then we're going to move on to JSON forms. So if I go now to other controls, or actually I'll just go here and I'll type in chart. You'll see that we have JavaScript charting, and when we bring up the JavaScript charting builder, Previously, it was always just rgraph, but now you have a choice of either rgraph or the Alpha Anywhere SVG library. And if you choose the Alpha SVG library, you get a gallery over here. So these are all of the charts that are currently supported by the Alpha SVG library. And you can see that basically each chart in the Alpha SVG library is defined by a JSON object over here that defines the settings for the chart. And you can basically modify the appearance and the behavior of the chart by modifying this JSON. So there's a pretty extensive set of chart types. We'll be adding new chart types over time, but you can see some of these chart types are quite elaborate. Like here, for example, is a donut and then a polar chart, and then here's basically multiple charts, a line chart and a bar chart all superimposed on each other. And all of these charts are defined here by a JSON settings object. So that's Alpha's SVG charting library. And this charting library has been used in the transform dashboard. So that was the main motivation for us building this SVG charting library, so we could use it in transformed dashboards. But we also used them in in-row charting, in-row list charting, where you can put little charts, little tiny charts inside each row of a list control, and we showed that on Tuesday. So what I'd like to do now is move on to JSON forms, and I think that the easiest way of describing what a JSON form is by, first of all, looking at the JSON form tester. So I'm going to bring up the JSON form tester over here. And the JSON form tester is very similar to if you've ever used the template tester in Alpha. So I'm going to bring up the template tester here as well, just to contrast that. That didn't go well. Oh, I guess you can't have the JSON form tester and the template tester open at the same time. So I'm going to just exit Alpha and just restart it, because I didn't know that you couldn't have them both open at the same time. Apologize for this, but this is what happens during live demos of
Sure
unreleased
is.
software. So just as a reminder for people, the templates are used in the view box and also in the list control. And templates are the way that we have of merging JSON data into HTML to create rich-looking HTML. So if I go now to let's go to the web control panel and go to tools and then go to the template tester. So the idea behind the template tester is, let's just go and load an example here. This is not working at all. Something's gotten, so let me see if the JSON form tester is working any better. Okay, we'll just stick with the JSON form here. So let's go and start out with the simplest thing. So an edit control. So what you can see on the screen right now is that a JSON form is a combination of some JSON data, which is the data that the form displays, and then a JSON object here, which describes the form definition. And then over here, we see the actual rendition of the form. So you can see that if in this JSON over here, we've got field 1 as the label. I'm going to go and change that to field 2. And then if I go there and change the data from Fred here to Tom, and then say go and get the form data, this shows that the current data that has just been edited is currently Tom. If I go here and change that to a 2 over there, you'll see it now says 2 over there. So this is the simplest type of JSON form, just an edit box. So what I know that some people are getting scared right now and saying, well, I don't want to have to write this JSON, that looks too complicated. And all I'm showing is how a JSON form is nothing more than a JSON definition, much like a transform form is a JSON definition. But in fact, the way that you will build JSON forms in Alpha is in a JSON form builder, which I'm going to be demoing next. So let's go and just take a little bit more in-depth look at these JSON forms. So I'm going to go here, and here's a JSON form that displays some static HTML over there. Here's basically a switch control. So you can see this is how a switch control is defined, and there's the JSON that renders a switch control. Let's go now to, say, a button. This is how you would render a button. This would be a button that has, you can see we've got text on top of an image, and that's how a button control would be loaded. And then let's go to, say, a drop-down box. This is how a drop-down box would be rendered. So this is the JSON definition of a drop-down box over there. Then let's go and look at something a little bit more. If we go here to, say, a repeating group, this is more interesting, because this, in one of the key features of transform is something called data groups, which will be equivalent in the UX component. We've had repeating sections for a long time. So a data group is something where you have an unlimited number of instances of something. So I can go here, I've got, I can say add a new instance, and then go add another new instance. So I've got field 1 is my first instance. If I go there and update that and then say get the data, you'll see we've got instance 1, there's the data form 1 there, and then it'll go, this is my second instance, and I'll go now and say get data. And you can see that basically the data here that we have is an array of instances, and there's the first instance and there's the second instance. If I go there and change that to AAA, it's changing there to AAA. I can go there and add a new instance. And so this is the exact equivalent of the transform data groups that you can create. And then let's go here and look at, say, frames. There's a frame control. Frames can be collapsed and expanded. And then this is the JSON definition of what a frame control would look like. And we'll go here to star rating controls. That's a star rating control. And then finally, I'm going to just go here and do sliders. So there's a 1 value slider. If I say get value. So this is basically a way of learning the syntax of a JSON form. But as I mentioned, we don't expect that you'll actually build your JSON forms like this. You'll use a builder. So I'm going to go now to Alpha and create a brand new component. And then I'm going to put a JSON form control onto this component. So I'm going to go here and go to JSON form. It's one of the control types, and that's going to put a JSON form onto the screen. So just like you put a list control onto the screen and then configure it in the builder, you do the same thing with JSON form. So JSON form is a single control that appears in the UX, and then you double click to open up the builder, and here we have the builder. So I'm going to go here and say I'd like to add some data controls, and I'm going to go here and add in first name, last name, city, and state, and then click OK. So there's my JSON form right now, but I can also now go and do a real-time preview of this form. So I've opened up the real-time preview window, and what I'm going to do now is go to the JSON form here and start modifying properties. So I'll click on first name, and then I'm going to go to first name here and change the label from first name to first name, and then click OK. And you can see that in real time, it updates over here. So now what I'm going to do is go to the last name field and move that up. So there you can see it updates in real time. Also, as I click on the fields in the builder here, they're updating in real time. So that's one of the first nice things about the JSON form builder, is that you have a real-time preview of the form. as you are building it. So this is obviously a really simple JSON form, but JSON forms can be very big and also quite rich and quite complex. So what I mentioned earlier was that JSON forms are very lightweight, and so you can build very large forms as JSON forms without having any real performance degradation. So I'm going to go now and close this down and delete everything that I have there right now, and then go to the Quick Start Genie and say that I'd like to create a JSON form using a list of controls. So this shows me what the syntax is. But what I'm going to do now is I've created a quick list over here that I'm going to just paste in. I'm going to just copy this to the clipboard. I've created 200 fields. So I'm going to go now and paste that in over there. So I've pasted in 200 fields. Go ahead and click OK. So now we have a JSON form that's got 200 fields, and I'm going to click OK now, and then switch over to run mode. So here's my form that has 200 fields in it. And you can see it's very performant. There's just one control on the UX component. If I double click, the builder comes up very quickly, and I can now go and edit any of these fields. So when I say that JSON forms are very performant, this is what I mean. They're very lightweight, and they don't, if you were to build a UX component that had 200 individual input controls, the builder would slow down, and the form itself would also slow down. But JSON forms are going to be extremely quick. So I'm going to just say exit without saving. Another nice thing about JSON forms is that they are fully responsive. So what I'm going to do now is let's just switch over to this demo that I have over here and take a look at the definition of this form. And you'll see that what we've done is we've said that first name has a width of flex 3, and that last name has a flex of list of flex 1, and that there's a line break after that. So that means that the first name field is going to be 3 times the width of the last name field. Then address is going to be on a line by itself, and then we have city, state, and zip all on the same line, and city is going to be 4 times the length of state. And well, state is our reference here. So city will be 4 times the size of state, and zip will be 2 times the size of state. So let's go ahead now and run this. And then I'm going to use this slider here to adjust the size of the form. So you can see that as I adjust the size of the form, watch the size of first name here and last name, and then city, state, and zip. And you'll see that as I make this form bigger, first name is always 3 times the size of last name, and city is always 3 times the size of state over there. So this is what we mean by fully responsive over there. So let's see what else I'd like to point out. So the other thing that's really nice about JSON forms is that they can be used as the detail view for a list control. So I'm going to go now and create a brand new list control. So we'll go here and we'll say create a list control. And just to keep it simple, I'm going to build it on a SQL database. So I'll go there and choose the customer table from Northwinds. So we don't have a detail view yet for this form, so we'll just go there and I'll go into working preview. So there's my form. So now let's go here and make a JSON form over here. So I've added a JSON form, but you can see I've done nothing at this point to actually configure this form. So I'm going to leave this form unconfigured at this point, go back to the list and say that this list has a detail view, and that the detail view, normally we would say it's a field map, but now I'm going to say no, the detail view is actually a JSON form, and the JSON form we want to use is called JSON form 1. And then I could say that either the JSON form has been pre-configured by me, or else I want to auto-generate the form on the server at runtime, or auto-generated on the client at runtime. So this is a demonstration of, earlier I mentioned that JSON forms can be created programmatically. So I'm going to go there and say generated server side, and now go ahead and run my component. And you'll see that as I click on each row there is my JSON form has been generated programmatically, automatically for me. And so this is that would be an example of how the JSON form can be created programmatically on the fly. But I can also go here to my quick start genies and say that I'd like to basically create this JSON form based on the structure of a list control. So now we're going to go there and we're going to make a JSON form that exactly matches that list control that we're using. And now I can go here and start modifying this JSON form. So for example, one of the things that you'll notice in this JSON form, if we go here and turn the preview window on, is that the form label is being shown to the left of the input control. So I'm going to go to this first control there and go here to, I believe it's the layout, and change it to label float above. And I'll go here to this company name and also change that to label float above. And now let's go and run this. Let's do that. It didn't quite do what I was hoping, so I'll just do a demo of label float above, starting from scratch here. And so I'll go here and create JSON form, and then add a control. I'll go here and say first name, last name. And then let's go to here. So this is label before. We're going to change this one to label float above. So you can see that as we click into that control, the label floats above, but this one we have the label to the left, and we can go now into the designer, open up the preview so we can do the real-time view, and then go to this control, which was set currently to label before, and change it, say, to label above. So now the label is above the control, not to the left of the control. And of course, these layouts here are predefined layouts, but you can also create your own layout. So you can go there and create an ad hoc layout and then edit that and give it a name, and then specify which all the different pieces of the control go. So there's the content, the label, the error, and the description. So you can create these custom layouts for all the controls in your JSON forms, etc. So we've shown how the JSON form can easily be used as the detail view, and how the JSON form can also be generated programmatically, either server side or client side. So you might be wondering, well, what's the difference between generating the JSON form programmatically, server side or client side? And the reason that you might want to do a JSON form generated client side is that when you're working with a NoSQL database, unlike a SQL database, each document or each row in each row, in a SQL database has the exact same schema. So if you define a SQL database that has columns of first name, last name, city, state, and zip, and your table has 10 rows, all of those 10 rows are going to have the exact same schema. But that's not true in a JSON, in a NoSQL database. In a NoSQL database, record 1 can have a totally different schema than record 2. And if you want to be able to edit, if you want to be able to display that data in your list control and then be able to edit it, the form definition for row 1 in your list might be different than the form definition for row 2, because the data in row 1 may be different than row 2. It'll have a different schema. And so being able to generate the JSON form on the fly client side means that your form will modify itself to the shape of the JSON data automatically for each row in the list control. So hopefully that was not too confusing, a description of why you might want client-side generation of the JSON form in real time as you click on different rows
So if you were doing it that way, would the list control basically have one field, which is HTML data, and then the JSON form builder parses out that data to create the form? Is that the idea?
You could, the list control could show the fields that are common to all documents. So like, for example, if we go, let's just quickly demonstrate that. So I'm going to just exit out of this here and go back to I'll go to the Mongo Explorer just to demonstrate this. And I'll say execute query. Let's go and, okay. So here we have these documents, and you can see, because they were created by importing data from a SQL table, every document has the exact same structure. But I can go to, say, this document too, and this is just JSON. I can go here and type in colors, and then go there and type in an array, red, green, blue. Just reformat that to make it look nice. I've got a mistake. I need a comma over there, and then reformat that, and then hit save. So now I'm going to go back to this first document. You can see it doesn't have colors, but this document does. So this would be an example where row 1 has a certain set of fields, but row 2 has a totally different set of fields. And my JSON form, if it's generated client side, will automatically adjust to reflect this data so that I can edit this data and then commit it back to the database.
Cool.
So the NoSQL databases are really, they are really powerful. Of course, because there's no schema behind them, that it's possible to, with a SQL database, there's you control what gets into the database, so you've got less chance of junk getting into the database. With a NoSQL database, because there's no schema, you can end up with a situation where users have created data that is really not clean. But on the other hand, there's a lot of advantages to being able to add fields to a row or to a document in an ad hoc manner, as I've just done over here. So I think that concludes all that I would like to say about JSON forms. I'd like to just mention the list control again. So if I go back to the list here, I'm going to just open up this list control and switch over to calendars. So the calendar control is just a different view of the list data. So I've got here a list control that happens to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different layouts. The default layout is the columnar layout. So this is the data that we're showing in the list. And then I can switch to a month view and a week view or a day view. So all I'm looking at here are different views of the data in the list, this is the list, this is the data in the list. So The list control has multiple views, one of which is a calendar. We've shown this in the past. You can see if I go back into this list over here and we go to multiple layouts, if we added a new layout, a layout can basically, each layout in a list can be columnar, which is something which is the most common, obviously, freeform, which is pretty common as well. But a layout can also be a Kanban, custom, a map, a chart, or a calendar. So we've shown how you can basically use a list to display data in a calendar format. And it's unreleased, but it's you can get your hands on it by sending Alpha a request to get the feature key that turns on the feature. But what's still unreleased is the ability to use the list with the calendar layout as a plug and play replacement for the web to cal control, and we'll be releasing that later this year. So as I mentioned earlier, Web2Cal is a third-party calendar control that needs to be purchased separately from Alpha. That we've built genies into Alpha that work nicely with Web2Cal, but we're going to be replacing that with genies that work with our own calendar control, making it very easy to add calendars to your applications. And the nice thing about the Alpha calendar control is that it's, again, fully responsive and works nicely in mobile apps as well. And then the final thing that I'd like to talk about, Dave, am I out of time, Dave, by the way?
No, actually, you have until 1:15 if you want to use it. So we gave you loads of time so that we have questions.
Okay. So what I'd like to just talk about is our Get integration. So you can see here, I'm going to go here to, let's go to XBasic. We've had Get integration for quite some time in Alpha right now, and you turn any web project into a Get project by clicking on the Get button. But what we haven't had is branching. So you can see right now, I'm currently on a branch called New Branch, and inside this New Branch project, I have a file called XB2. I'm going to switch now to my main branch and watch what happens to the files here. This is switched now to XB1. And the reason that switched was that this file XB1 was checked in and was committed to the branch called main. But this file called XB2 doesn't exist in the main branch. It only exists in the new branch. So I'm going to switch to switch branch to new branch, and now we basically go back there to new branch 2. So the way in which you create branches is you just click on the branch field there and you just say create new branch, and that will basically go ahead and create a new branch for you. So Dave, I think that concludes all the roadmap stuff that I wanted to show. And if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
There are questions, and in fact, we could probably use a few more. If anyone has got questions, go ahead and type them into the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's start right here at the top. And this one's sort of a question back about your Firebase demo. And you had shown an example of a serverless app. So basically a static HTML page that was able to connect directly to a Firebase database. The question was, because people have been watching these other sessions, including Dan's session, is it secure? How is this being done? Does this use JavaScript web tokens, or does it pass an API key in, or how does that work?
So that's actually a really, really good question. So obviously, if you are connecting to Firestore using on the client side, then your access token and your secret are going to be in the browser so that anyone can get them. So at first glance, you'd say, oh my God, that's terrible. That's not secure. But it turns out that it can be secure. It's not secure out of the bat, but you can make it secure. So first of all, if I go back to Firestore here, and I go to this, say, over to this database, you can see there's a section here called rules.
Mhm.
And what this says is that right now, my rule says that anyone can read this Firestore database if the date is less than 21/10/25.
Okay.
But you can create other rules in Firestore that say that you can only read the database if you happen to be logged in. So even though your secret and your access token are visible in the client-side code, but anyone in the browser can go look at that, your Firestore database itself can be secure, because unless you have provided some part of your user interface the ability to allow someone to log into Firestore, and we have examples of how you set that up. They will not be able to see the data in your Firestore database because of the rule that you set in the rules section over here. So even though you are connected client side, you can make it secure.
Excellent. Someone else has asked, well, very separate question about if we're doing anything with reporting with HTML or Word, and if so, when's that coming out?
Well, reporting is on our roadmap. So we already have released last year a feature called Word Merge, where you can take a Microsoft Word template and merge JSON data into it to create a Microsoft Word document or a PDF document. So, but of course, that's not really a report in the sense that it doesn't have summary values and totals and stuff like that. So that is sort of like, that's a nice way of maybe producing, say, an invoice or a PDF file that displays a nicely formatted invoice from some JSON data. But the ability to create a report definition by editing a Microsoft Word template or just an HTML template is something that is scheduled on our roadmap, and it'll show up in the web control panel over here in a section called Document Templates. So, but I'm not at a point where I can actually demo that yet.
Okay,
But
cool.
that is something that we're working on.
Excellent, thanks. So a question here from the audience is, can the JSON form interact with the SQL database, or is it really just for working with JSON?
No. So a JSON form is for editing JSON data. The JSON data can come from anywhere. The JSON data can come from Mongo, can come from Firestore, or it could come from a SQL database. So for example, over here, let's just quickly go and I'll delete everything. Let's just go here and create a list control that is based on a SQL database. So here's SQL data. So we'll go there, Northwind, and then go here and choose customers and choose a bunch of fields. So now I've got a SQL database here. And now let's say that I want to edit the data in the SQL database using a JSON form. So I'm going to go here and go to JSON form. Then I'm going to go to this JSON form, and I'm going to say use the quick start genie, and I'm going to create this JSON form based on list one. So I've just created a JSON form now, and now I'm going to go into this JSON form and go to predefined controls and add in the buttons to commit the data. So I'll go there and save that now. Now I'm going to go back to this list control and say that this list has a detail view, and that the detail view is a JSON form. and the JSON form is form 1. So let's go ahead now and run it. So there's my data coming from the SQL database. It says Berlin 2. So let's go there and make that Berlin. Hit the save button. And I didn't put a synchronize button on here, but you can see there we go. The row is dirty. And if I had a synchronize button, I'd be able to push it back. So just to be clear, JSON forms are for editing JSON data. The JSON data can come from anywhere. It could come from a web service. It could come from a list control. The list control itself could get the data from a SQL backend. So JSON forms are for editing JSON data, and the JSON data can come from anywhere.
Very cool, thanks. All right, so I have two questions which are always the hardest ones to answer, and those are the when questions. The first when question is, when will the new code editors be available in Alpha Anywhere? So in other words, the Visual Studio ones.
So basically, the main reason that we haven't implemented them yet, and we've implemented the new code editors in lots of places in Alpha, but for example, if I go here to, well, actually, I'll show it over here. I'll go over there and go into this list, and I'll say static data, and then I'll bring up the static data, and I'll say sample data over there. You can see that what we're displaying over here, or if I do a JSON format, what I'm displaying over here, in fact, is Visual Studio Code. Yeah. So Visual Studio Code is available as it's open source. It's open source, and we've already incorporated all over Alpha, but we haven't used it for our editors yet, because one of the nice things about the Alpha editors, the XBasic editor and the JavaScript editor, is autocomplete. And we even though we could switch over to Visual Studio Code for our editors now, we wouldn't want to do that yet, because we don't yet have the XBasic autocomplete working inside these editors. So for example, when you go into an Alpha editor here, into say XBasic, you'll see that the minute I start typing, if I type say dim cn as SQL : I get all this autocomplete there. And I think that giving up that autocomplete just to get the Visual Studio Code editors would be a tough trade for many people.
Yep. Sure.
So until we get what's called a language server working in Visual Studio Code, we're not going to switch over. But it is on our roadmap.
Excellent. Also, I think there's a clarification. Is it the Visual Studio editor or really the Monaco editor that's going to be?
It's Monaco. Visual Studio Code is built on top of Monaco, so it's Monaco, to be absolutely clear.
There's some pendants among us apparently. So. And the other when question was about the SVG charts. When might those be available?
So SVG charts are currently in the nightly build, and the nightly build is scheduled for official release sometime next week. So that means that SVG charting will be available in an official build next week. It's currently available in the nightly builds right now, as is the list control with the in-row charting is available in the nightlies right now, will be available in next week's official release.
Excellent. Looking through both the Slack and GoToWebinar, and it looks like we've run low on questions. Obviously, if we do miss a question, or you have a question that that you come up with afterwards, just send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com. Selwyn, thank you very much. This is a terrific overview, an exciting overview of what's to come. So that concludes this particular session. We're going to have a lunch break now, and we'll be back here at 2:15 Eastern Time. Let me see what's coming up on the agenda. Oh, we're going to go right into a breakout session where we'll be talking about cloud computing in one room, working with IIS in another, and Transform in a third one. We hope to see you then. Then we have a couple more exciting sessions after that. Progressive web apps with Bob Moore. You won't want to miss that. And then a bit of fun with Greg Bowling, a short, silly session at the very end. We'll see you then. Thanks again, Selwyn. Thanks again, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.